the nature of approaches and methods in English language teaching. We had an introductory class on this, and we have got the historical background of English language teaching through the time from 14th and 15th, 16th and 17th century. What was the scenario of English language teaching? Our today's class will be discussing that in which way we will be learning English language. The course title is Approaches and Methods in English Language Teaching. That means one language. Okay? So it should be appropriate that for studying one language, there should be one approach or there should be one method. Why? There are so many methods and approaches are applied in case of learning second language, especially English language. Okay? We will try to pinpoint the scenario, what happened through the gradual development of English language teaching. As a broader perspective, we can also say that English language teaching, if we become master in English language teaching, then we can teach any foreign language. Okay? So it will be used in multifarious ways. But the question is that why for teaching English language, why there are so many methods and approaches are applied? We will try to give definition of approaches and methods. We will try to explain that why there are so many methods and approaches are applied in English language teaching. And what was the scenario in which approaches and methods in English language teaching have been changed. Okay? So we started from a point, we continued that method or approach for a certain period, and next time we changed that method and approach. Next time we changed. Actually, not we, linguists, psychologists, philologists, and also the learner's necessity, and also the teacher's requirements, and also the requirements of the common people, not only the learners, the common people who want to learn English language. So for the requirements of learners, for the necessity of the learners, for the appropriateness of several methods and approaches, one method was changed, and that goes up to a new methods and or a new approach. Okay, we will try to point out that. Okay, so we have got the history that from the time immemorial, not immemorial, we can say from the 14th century, when Latin was the chief language, Latin was the classical language. We have got that information that Latin was the language of several great writers. They would write their literature in Latin language. So from 14th, 16th, 17th century, GTA, that means the grammar translation method, was only method for English language teaching. We have got the logic why GTM at that time was the one method to follow English language learning and teaching. We have got the information that at that time we didn't have any other method in our hand, and especially Latin language literature was supposed to be taught that you have to know the vocabulary and the grammatical rules. So for a long period of time, grammar translation method was a dominant English language teaching method. But as I have said, the goals, objective, necessity of the learner changes. And when changed the necessity of the learners and the goals and objectives of the learners changed, then GTM changed, and we got a different approach or method in English language teaching. In 1920 decades, we pinpoint some goals, that what are the requirements of the learners, and judging the requirements of the learners, linguists, they came up with some proposals, that means the principles of English language teaching. What did they say? They say that linguists and psychologists developed theories of philosophical and practical need of English language learners. There is an abstract necessity, that means I love to learn English language because I like to learn English language. This necessity is abstract. But what is the practical necessity? The practical necessity, I have to communicate with other people, because we have got the scientific invention, we have got the exploration of the world, we have got the exploration of several multinational companies, we have got the United Nations, we have got the Atomic Energy Commission, we have got the International Sporting Agency. So many international organizations are there. So they need practical need. They don't need that I want to like English, that means I like English language. This is the abstract idea. But the practical need, that I have to communicate with others in a language. And if it becomes English language, that would be well. Why? Because at present 60% or more than 60% people, they have command over English. They have direct command, that means they can speak, they can understand in English language, or they can only understand the English language but they can't speak. Okay. But approximately 80% of the world population, they know English. So they have their practical needs. That means we have to communicate, and that scenario started at the initial stage of 20th century. So now we are in a necessity to communicate in English language. Then the philosophers, psychologists, linguistics, they proposed several approaches and methods. What can be applied to fulfill the practical demands of language learners? Another incident happened after 20 years, that means in 1940 decades, applied linguistics, that field developed. We know that there is a physics, theoretical physics and applied physics. There is chemistry and applied chemistry. What is the difference? Theoretical physics will teach you several theories, and applied physics will make you efficient to apply the physics theory in practical life. That is done in applied physics. In English language teaching, that scenario started in 1940 decades, and that title of the course is Applied Linguistics. That means applied linguistics, you have to have the language knowledge and you have to apply it in your practical needs. So that scenario started in 1940 decades. And when we can apply that English language teaching theory in our practical life, then another linguist philosopher came up with their own proposals regarding several methods and approaches. Up to this portion, we have only one, that means GTM. So when so many requirements came in our hand, that means practical needs, applied linguistics, then the linguists, the philologists, they came up with their fresh arguments. And what are the arguments? That means in which way we can teach language, in which way we can understand the way we can learn English more effectively. Okay. And they came up with some questions. Actually, knowledge starts with what? A question. If you don't have any question in your mind, then you will not try to find the answer. So when there will be a question, then you will try to have answer of that question. So in the intuitive quality, that means the human mind will try to have answer, and the intellectual mind will try to make questions. So in this language teaching scenario, the linguist, philologists, they had few questions. The first question is that how languages are learned by children. The first question, yes. And how learning language is represented in organized in human brain or in memory. We see that human brain, it is smaller in size in comparison to the elephant's brain, isn't it? Elephant brain is large, but human brain is small. But this brain has 10 billion more genius than the brain of a computer. So in human brain, several sectors are there that is sensitive. When you feel love, you will start laughing. Some portion of your brain will instigate and you will laugh. Same thing will be happening that when we will cry. We cry because a portion, a nano percent of our brain gets stimulated and we start crying. And when we start crying, then automatically there is a linkage to our eyes and tears will come down. So everything is represented in our brain. Linguists and the psychologists, they said that in which portion of our brain is active for language learning and where it is present. If we learn a language, naturally children learn language. So in which portion of our brain that language is present? In which portion of our memory is very much language synthetic? Okay, so they asked those questions. Who asked this question? That means the linguists and the philosophers. And how language is structured, like human brain or memory. Where and how human brain work in language learning. That are the questions they come up. Here we have got English philologist Henry Sweet. Henry Sweet, actually he was very much appreciated in German language. So Henry Sweet, okay, especially he is famous for Old English language and Norse, that means the Norwegian English language. And he thought that the grammar translation and grammar should be studied minorly. And he investigated that if we get the proper input in our brain, that means human brain will get a picture of that linguistic data and we will start producing the language. Without the click of the camera, your picture will not be taken in your smartphone. Okay, so Henry Sweet discussed that actually linguistic data will get pictured by our human brain, and for this reason some input is necessary. And he came up with his idea of phonetics. In one class, in previous class, we have got International Phonetic Alphabet. It started in 1846. So that was IPA, International Phonetic Association. They got, that means phonetics is the study of sound. Okay, so Henry Sweet, that means he is famous for phonetics, that means the study of the sound of a language, because every child learns the sound first. So how sound will be received by human brain? It may be children, it may be adult. But the sound should be apprehended by human brain. So if our brain can understand the sound of a language, then we will receive the language quickly and we will get the print of linguistic data in our brain quickly and we will produce the language quickly. Another man, Danish, he is a linguist, Otto Jespersen. He is supposed to be one of the greatest language scholars of the 19th and 20th century. Jespersen, actually he was born in Danish, and he also came up with his idea, that is grammar of English language. Another linguist, English linguist. He also, why they are doing so? That means he is a phonetician, Harold Palmer. Some say Palmer, or you can say Palmer. Okay, it's a proper noun. So pioneer in the field of English language learning and teaching, and dedicated himself to oral method. Okay. So Otto Jespersen and Henry Sweet, they talked about grammar more or less, but with the action of our brain. But this man, Harold Palmer, he came up with the idea of oral method. Oral method, that what we can do, oral saline, you know, is it? Oral saline will not be pushed in your head. You have to drink it. So this man, Harold Palmer, came up with his idea of oral method. And he had a long career in Japan. 14 years he stayed in Japan. And he stayed there, contributed for the development of applied linguistics. That means the idea that came in the field of English language teaching in 1940 decades, that the idea of applied linguistics, getting that idea, this Harold Palmer offered many things relating to oral method and applied linguistics. Applied linguistics, that means we can apply our linguistic data in two ways. One way, that means we can write good English, and another way, we can speak good English. So grammar expression method would make us appropriate that we would be efficient in writing good English. But Harold Palmer said that how we can speak good English. He came up with this suggestion. That suggestion, Harold Palmer's suggestions, was dedicated to speaking, oral method, and applied linguistics. How we can communicate more effectively, quickly, and efficiently. He has a long career in Japan, as I have said, that Masachato Suengi Kiaro Matsukata, and went to Japan. And he became the linguistic advisor over there in Japan. And then he, in 1923, established the Institute for Research in English, and now Institute for Research in English Language Teaching, and became the first director, and he founded the Institute's bulletin. Okay, who? Harold Palmer. And he also awarded D.Litt in 1935 by Tokyo Imperial University. Then he published a book, 1000-Word English, with A.S. Hornby. Most probably you have heard his name. A.S. Hornby is the creator of Advanced Learner's Dictionary. Okay. So this man, Harold Palmer, worked with A.S. Hornby, and that is the first English to English dictionary, that is Advanced Learner's English Dictionary. He contributed over there, that means 1000 words in English. And during the World War II, he lived in England and assisted the war effort with the languages skill, publishing 3 booklets about the French language to assist soldiers preparing for the invasion of Normandy. So this is Harold Palmer. He had a contribution because Harold Palmer came up with this idea of oral language and also how language can be applied in our daily needs. These 3 linguists, who are they? Otto Jespersen, Henry Sweet, and Harold Palmer. develop principles and theories to design and language teaching programs. Courses. We have a course, isn't it? There is a course materials. There is an objectives of every course. Okay, so everything. So these three linguists started to develop the course materials and other things, what can be applied in case of applied linguistics. So they thought that learning vocabulary and grammar as the ways of learning English language cannot be applied in practical English language teaching. They said, no, grammar is not only the thing that we will teach English. So we have learned grammar from 300 years, 14, 15, 16, 17, 400 years. Okay, so they say that grammar study should not be the only way of teaching English language. So we have to do something more. What are the things? They also try to answer why the materials developed by them are useful in English language teaching. So they said that yes, if grammar is not only the only way of teaching English language, what would be the other ways? So they answered it. And in 1963, American applied linguist Edward Anthony tried to find out the relation between language teaching theories and methods. So getting their idea of the three linguists, Danish, Jesperson, Henry Sweet, and Harold Palmer, here Anthony, he came up with his idea, that is what can be applied in English language teaching. And Anthony divided the English language teaching principles in three ways. What are the ways? That is approach, method, and techniques. What is an approach? Approach is a set of theories, assumption, hypothesis. That is a set of correlative assumptions dealing with the nature of language teaching and learning. I have said that actually every child first receives the linguistic data, that means the sound of the data. Okay, so it is the assumption, hypothesis. Okay, and it is a theory, abstract theory. Okay, that is axiomatic, and it describes the nature of language to be taught. That means how language can be taught. That is an approach. Approach means whenever your brain will be thinking an assumption. What is the assumption? Assumption meaning কি? অনুমান। অনুমান আমরা এর আগে কি করেছি যে প্রত্যেকটি শিশু প্রথমত শোনে। ওকে, এটা হলো assumption। তাহলে যদি প্রত্যেকটি শিশু ভালোভাবে শোনে, যখন আপনি দেখবেন একটা ছোট বাচ্চার দিকে কোনো শব্দ করলে সে শব্দের দিকে হচ্ছে তাকাবে। সে আসলে সে শব্দটার দিকে সে শব্দটা সে ক্যাচ করছে। এই জন্য যখন আমরা তাকে যে কথাগুলো বলি সেই কথাগুলো সে আস্তে আস্তে রিসিভ করে। সো দিস ইজ অ্যাসাম্পশন। দ্যাট মিনস ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ লার্নিং, চিলড্রেন লার্ন ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ বাই হিয়ারিং। সো দ্যাট ইজ দ্য assumption. So that is the theory, and that assumption is called approach. So when we have got that listening is a way of learning language, so it is the theory. So that theory can apply in such a way, that means we have to put some linguistic data. We have to listen. We have to offer in the classroom some listening materials. That means materials like English song, English news. We have got the idea, that means listening will improve our language learning. So next time we have applied a way. What is the way? That means we provide listening materials in the classroom. So that is the way, that means the method. And a plan for the serial presentation of language teaching materials. Okay. And language teaching materials will not contradict with each other, and different sets of language teaching materials are the different approaches Method is procedural. Procedural. What is the meaning of this? That means different set of language teaching materials are the different approaches. That means I have an assumption, that is language learner learns by listening. So if it is our assumption, then we will put some listening in language class. If we assumption that reading is a way of language learning, so listening is also a way of getting language data, and also another way, that is reading can give you linguistic data. And it is said that one time writing is equal to 10 times reading. So whenever you will write something, in the brain will produce the writing, and one time writing is equal to 10 times reading. যদি আমরা ধারণা করে নিই যে লেখাপড়া করে ইংরেজি বই পড়েও ভাষা শেখা যায়, তখন এটা আমাদের কি অ্যাজাম্পশন, তখন আমরা ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ক্লাসে ব্যবহার করব ইংরেজি বই পড়া, যেটা আমরা অনেক আগের ক্লাসের সেকেন্ড হাফে পড়িয়েছি। সবাই আমরা একটা করে স্লাইড করেছি না? কেন পড়েছি? সেই স্লাইডটা আমরা ধারণা করেছি যে যদি আমরা স্লাইড পড়ি তাহলে আপনাদের স্পিকিংটা ভালো হবে, এবং অন্যরা যারা শুনবেন তাদের কি হবে, লিসেনিংটা হবে। তাহলে আমরা কয়েকটা অ্যাজাম্পশন করলাম। একটা অ্যাজাম্পশন হলো যে সবাই শিশুরা হচ্ছে শুনে ভাষা শেখে। যদি শুনে ভাষা শেখে, এটা যদি আমরা অ্যাজাম্পশন করি, তাহলে আমরা ইংরেজি ক্লাসে যত বেশি শোনাতে পারব। আবার যদি আমরা ধারণা করি যে রাইটিং হচ্ছে ভাষা শেখার একটা ওয়ে, তখন আমরা কি করব, ক্লাসে হচ্ছে যত বেশি লেখাতে পারব। আবার যদি আমরা ধারণা করি যে রিডিং হচ্ছে কোন একটা ভাষা শেখার একটা ওয়ে, তাহলে যত পরিমাণ আমরা রিড করব, এটা ইট ইজ রিসার্চ, it is observed in many investigation that the students who pass many time at the time of reading the books, their language is good. That means reading, আমরা যদি ইংরেজি বই পড়ি তাহলে ইংরেজি নিউজ পেপার পড়ি, তখনও আমাদের কি হয়, আমরা ভাষা শিখি। এই জন্য যদি আমরা একটা অ্যাজাম্পশন ধরলাম যে হচ্ছে কি, যে হলো শুনে ভাষা শেখা যায়, এটা হলো অ্যাজাম্পশন, এটা হলো কি অ্যাপ্রোচ। আবার বই পড়েও ভাষা শেখা যায়, তাহলে এটাও কি। আবার লিখেও ভাষা শেখা যায়, এটাও হলো অ্যাপ্রোচ। এখন আমি কি করলাম, ক্লাসরুমে এসে বললাম যে বিভিন্ন ধরনের ম্যাটেরিয়ালস আমি প্রোভাইড করলাম। রিডিংকে যদি আমি মানে এস্টাবলিশ করতে চাই, যে ওয়ে আমি রিড করালাম সেটা কি মেথড, এবং কিভাবে রিড করাবো। আমি বললাম তোমাদেরকে যে আমরা সবাই কি করবো, স্লাইড পড়বো। ক্লাসরুমে যে আমি যে স্লাইড পড়াচ্ছি আপনাদের, আমরা সবাই যে পড়তেছি সেটা হলো টেকনিক। ওকে, আমি বললাম যে না, আমরা স্লাইড পড়বো না, আমরা আসলে প্রতিদিন একটা বইয়ের একটা করে পেজ পড়বো। এটা হলো ক্লাসরুম টেকনিক। কারণ আমি কি করাচ্ছি, রিডিং করাচ্ছি, এই জন্য আমি সেভারেল টেকনিক অবলম্বন করছি। ওকে, আবার যদি পাশাপাশি যদি আমি লিসেনিং করি, ঠিক আছে, তাহলে আমি বললাম যে কি, ঠিক আছে, ওকে, আমরা ইংরেজি সং শুনবো। যখন আমি সং প্লে করছি, সেটা হলো টেকনিক, কারণ সং শুনে আমরা কি করছি, সেই ভাষাটা শিখছি। আমি বলেছিলাম আমরা আজকে একটা ইংরেজি মুভি দেখবো, সেটা কি, আমি বললাম যে আমরা সেটাও করবো না, আমরা ভাষা শেখার জন্য আমরা হচ্ছে একটা ইংলিশ স্পিকিং কান্ট্রিতে একটা গ্রুপ, এই গ্রুপ ভিজিট করবো। সেখানে গিয়ে কি করবো, আমরা কোনো কথা বলবো না, বিভিন্ন জায়গায় যাব, বিভিন্ন মানুষ যে একে অপরের সাথে ইংরেজিতে কথা বলছে সেগুলো আমরা শুনবো, সেটাও কি। কিন্তু আমাদের আইডিয়া কি, অবস্থা কি ছিল, যে সবাই ভাষা শুনে শেখে। এটাকে যদি আমরা ইউটিলাইজ করতে চাই, সেটা হলো অ্যাপ্রোচ, এবং শোনার যে মেটেরিয়ালসগুলো, সেই মেটেরিয়ালসগুলো আমরা যেটা অ্যাপ্লাই করবো সেটা হলো মেথড, আর যেই স্পেসিফিক মেটেরিয়ালস ব্যবহার করব সেটা হলো টেকনিক। So these are the difference. That means technique is the implementation keys which take place in classroom. A particular trick. বোঝা গিয়েছে? Approach is a theory. Method is the ways, and technique is the implementation keys. In which way you will apply reading? In which way you will apply listening? That is the technique. So very subtle difference, but if you can understand, you can. So look here, there is an example. Approach: learn language by listening. Method: listening music will help language learning. And technique: play music at the class. Okay. আমরা এটাকে চেঞ্জ করে দিই। লার্ন ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ লিসেনিং এর জায়গায় আমরা কি বললাম? রাইটিং। মেথডের জায়গায় কি হবে? এনি সর্ট অফ রাইটিং। রাইটিং প্র্যাকটিস ইন দ্য ক্লাসরুম। তারপরে আমরা ক্লাসরুমে এসে কি বললাম? রাইট আ লেটার, রাইট আ প্যারাগ্রাফ। আবার রিডিং এস ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ লার্নিং, ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ইজ লার্ন বাই রিডিং। ক্লাসরুমে আমরা কি বললাম? আমরা হলো বই পড়বো। হ্যাঁ, বই পড়ে কোন বই পড়বো? আমরা দেখলাম যে হচ্ছে যে ভাষা পড়তে চাই সেই বই, যে কোনো একটা ভাষা পড়বো। সো দিস আর দ্য ডিফারেন্স বিটুইন অ্যাপ্রোচ, মেথডস অ্যান্ড আইডিয়া ক্লিয়ার? কার আইডিয়া ক্লিয়ার না? ইয়েস স্যার? ওকে। সো মনে হয় হ্যাঁ জয়যুক্ত হয়েছে। মৌনতা সম্মতির লক্ষণ। আর যারা লজ্জা পান তারা লজ্জা ভেঙে বের হয়ে আসে। Yes. No, এর আগে আমরা বললাম যে we can visit some other field. Okay. সেখানে আমরা কি বললাম? আমি বললাম যে yes, টেকনিক। আমরা হচ্ছে রিডিং প্র্যাকটিস করব। ওকে। আমি হচ্ছে আপনাদের টেকনিক বললাম যে তা আপনাদের দুইজনকে দাঁড়িয়ে এখানে বললাম যে আপনারা একটা ডায়াগ্রাম করুন। এটা ক্লাসরুমে হতে পারে, অথবা আপনাকে একটা দায়িত্ব দিলাম যে হচ্ছে আপনি বাংলাদেশে কয়টা হলো 5 স্টার হোটেল আছে? ঢাকায় হোটেল কন্টিনেন্টাল আছে, রেডিসন আছে, শেরাটন। আপনাকে দায়িত্ব দিলাম যে 3টা হোটেলে আমরা হচ্ছে এই ক্লাসে যারা আছি তাদের সবাই হচ্ছে কি করব? আমরা সবাই হচ্ছে আমরা একটা পার্টি করব। আপনাকে দায়িত্ব দেওয়া হলো যে প্রত্যেকটা ইনফরমেশন ডেস্কে আপনি যোগাযোগ করবেন, করে হচ্ছে তাদের ডেটাগুলো নেবেন এবং কোন ভাষায়? সো আপনি যখন কথা বলছেন তখন আপনি অ্যাপ্লাই করছেন যে আপনি আপনার স্পিকিং বাড়াচ্ছেন, আর ওই সাইড থেকে যিনি কথা বলছেন, ও মে আই টক টু দ্য ম্যানেজার প্লিজ? ইয়া ইয়েস, সো আই ওয়ান্ট টু বুক আ ফ্লোর ফর 1 ডে। ওই দিক থেকে এখন বললো যে ইয়া, হাউ মেনি পিপল আর দেয়ার ইন ইউর গ্রুপ? তার মানে ওই দিকে আপনি কি শুনছেন? ইংরেজি শুনছেন। সো ইউ আর আনসারিং যে উই আর অ্যাপ্রক্সিমেটলি 40 people in our group. Oh, okay sir, there are 7 categories are this. So you have to pay 50% advance. So these are the way. Okay. So you can get data not only for classroom. So classroom teaching performance can be technique or any technique that can be applied by the instructor or the lesson planner or the course teachers. Okay, that is the technique. Got that? Yeah. Okay. So any question? Okay. So. Yeah. Anthony, what did you say? Anthony said, yeah. Anthony, what did he say? That means there are 3 ways of English language method. The American linguists, and he said these 3 terms, that is approach, methods, and approach is the level of assumption, beliefs about the language, and language learnings are specified. Method is the level at which the theory is put into practice, and techniques is the way that we can exercise in the classroom. Anthony's model shows the clear distinction between theories and practices of English language teaching. So, language teaching reform movements, that is approach, direct method, that means derived from an approach. That means what are the necessity? In 1940 decade we said that we need applied linguistics. And for this reason, in grammar translation method, there is a way that first language, mother language can be used in classrooms. But direct method, he said that yes, we want communication. And for this reason, direct method said no, first language will be used in the classroom. So English language should be learned and taught in the way that means that directly no mother language will be used at the time of teaching and learning. So that is the method. And classroom activities, that is the techniques. That means you can put dialogue, you can put conversation, you can put drill. Drill means, that means repetition, you have to repeat. So in such a way we can get the approach and method successful. So here, Canadian linguist, another linguist, he came up with William Francis Mackay. In his book, Language Teaching Analysis, 1965, mentions language teaching on the dimension of selection, gradation, presentation, repetition in method. So previously we have got these are the approach, these are the methods. But here, Mackay, he came up with his idea. That means what are the course? What we will be dealing in the classroom. So he said that in this book there is a selection. We have to select the materials. What we have to do. And gradation. That means which one will come first and which one will come last. And also the presentation. In which way linguistic data will be presented before the learners. And also the repetition, how, in which way. That means we know that the repetition and the drill will get print in your brain. একটা কথা যদি আমরা কয়েকবার যেমন হুমায়ুন আহমেদের নাটকে যে টিয়া পাখিটা কথা বলতে শিখেছিল সেটা কি করেছিল ওদের কাদের হচ্ছে টেপ রেকর্ডার কিনেছিল কিনে হচ্ছে সেই টিয়া পাখির সামনে ওই টেপ রেকর্ডার চালু করে দিয়েছিল কেন চালু করে দিয়েছিল কারণ একটা শব্দ যদি একটা টিয়া পাখি 4000 বার শোনে তাহলে সেই শব্দটা সে কি করতে পারে মুখস্থ করতে এখন এই জন্য সে টেপ রেকর্ডার ব্যবহার করেছিল so in case of language data okay if you repeat that means your brain will get imprint or picture of the linguistic data and you can learn language so repetition gradation and also presentation is a way of learning language who said that the Canadian linguist Mackay yeah. So Mackay's book is primarily concerned with language teaching textbook and their organization. So this Canadian linguist came up with his idea in 1965 with his book. But there is a failure. Mackay's model fails to address the level of approach and to address the actual classroom behavior of teachers and learners. So he said that these are the data, but what will be the role of a teacher in a classroom? Some teachers will always talk like me. Some teachers will allow the students to read a lot. Okay. Some learners will not ask any question from the beginning to the end of the class. Some learners, I have a question. So some learners are extrovert and some learners are introvert. So what would be the role of a language learner in the classroom? What would be the role of a language teacher in the classroom? That term should be specified. Okay. So Mackay's idea failed to address that point. And in such a way he came up. So Mackay's book hence cannot serve the basis of comprehensive analysis of either approach or methods. But we have got an idea. That means we have to get gradation, selection, repetition. So this idea we have got from Mackay's book. Anthony, in 1963, tried to simplify the language teaching theoretical principles. So now Anthony came forward, who proposed the proposal of approach, methods and techniques, an American linguist. Nothing was said about the role of teachers and learners assumed in a method. No constructional materials are there. How an approach may be realized in method and how methods and techniques are related Anthony's model did not answer the above questions. Anthony simply said that these are approach, methods and techniques. So Anthony's model didn't describe in details that how these three things are interrelated. Okay. This is his paper. So to make the idea clear, Anthony's term, methods and technique, approach and methods can be called the level of design. Okay? And in case of method, objective, syllabus and content, they are the approach. Role of teachers, learners, instructional materials. Instructional materials are also be specified in approach and methods. So every details will be there. There should be objectives, there should be goals, there should be techniques, there should be teacher's role, there should be learner's role, there should be design. Okay? Everything should be included to have a clear idea. That means the clear picture of approaches, methods and techniques. Everything should be described. And the technique and the implementation can easily be described as a procedure, and method is theoretically attached to an approach and organizationally determined by the design and practically performs in procedures. Okay, so here we see some the data. It is smaller in size. It is in your book. Those who have got the book, you can see the picture over there. That is what is approach. It is tiny in shape, so you can see in your book. That means this is difference. That is the difference between approach, methods and procedures. Approach, first thing, a theory of the nature of language. I am reading the first line, others you will be reading. Design, the general and specific objective of the method. A syllabus model, types of learning and teaching activities, learner's role, teacher's role, the role of the instructional materials. These are the design, that means the method, and also procedure, classroom techniques, practices, behaviors observed when the method is used. So these are the procedures. So there is an approach, design and procedure. These are the analogy done by Richard and Rogers in his book. Okay. So we have something more with this. Actually, in Anthony's idea, we see that approach refers to theories of language and language learning that serves the source of the practices and principles in learning language in teaching. So here, language theory is of the linguistics theory and the psycholinguistics theory. Okay, we will be finishing today's class after discussing this one. That means the theory of language. In case of theory of language, there are 7 views, that is structural views, functional views and interactional view. What is the theory of language? These 3 theoretical views of language and the nature of language proficiency. First one, the structural view. This is the opinion that language is a system of structure. Every language is structured systematically. And what is the structure? Structure with some related elements. That is the structure view of language. If anyone wants to achieve the mastery of a language, he or she has to be master of that structure of a language. If you want to learn English language, we have to know the structure of English language, and vice versa. If you want to learn French language, we have to do so. That means structure, every language structure is common and systematically leveled. That is the structure. And in this there are some elements of the structure. What are the elements? We see the structure of a language, that phonological units like phonemes. What is phonemes? That is the smallest unit of a distinguishing one word. That is pa, ka, da. Okay. So this is the elements pa in tap. But next we have seen tag. Pa, tap, tag, ten. So that is the phoneme. So every language there is phoneme. There are phonemes. In English language there are how many phonemes? 44 phonemes. So the phonological units is common to every language. In Bangla language there are dirghikar, rishikar, okay, talabasha, jaw, okay. So these are the phonological units of every language. Then grammatical units like clauses, phrase and sentences. Grammatical operations like adding, shifting, joining, transforming elements, and the lexical unit like function word and structure word. What is the function word? Function word explain, that is the structure, that this create a link, that is grammatical and structural relationship into which the content words or may fit, that is of, to. Of this word naturally doesn't have many meaning. This is called functional words. That function. So I have seen that there is a laptop on the table. So if I say that if I omit on, so what would be the sentence? There is a laptop, the table. So the on, it doesn't have any specific meaning, but this on get linkage between the laptop and the table. Okay, so just like that, on, to, off, okay, these are called function words. And structure word? Structure word will be structure words are words belonging to the categories of articles, auxiliaries, conjunction, prepositions, pronouns, etc. That means the nouns, verb, adjectives, adverb. These are the structure words. So we have seen naturally in the basic structure, naturally subject plus verb plus adjective, subject plus verb plus adverbial, okay, subject plus verb plus prepositional phrase. So these are called structure words. So in the first structural view, we have got the idea that every language is systematically structured with some elements. What are the elements? Phonemes, grammar and lexical words. Second view is functional view. Functional view is a vehicle for the expression of functional meaning. Without meaning, effective communication cannot be established. So meaning should be there. So the communicative movement of language is included in this view. So semantics is a part of semantic. That means the way that you will understand the meaning of the sentence. Okay. So here functional view comes up with another linguist, that is Winkel's notional syllabuses is an example of this view. What's this view? That is the functional view. Okay, and next time the English for specific purpose. Specific purpose, that means you are a pilot. Are you? No. Every pilot needs different kind of English. The doctor will have different kind of English. And also the engineer, they need different vocabulary. Okay, so the English that will be applied for the teachers, that will not be applied for doctors, that will not be applied for the pilots, that would not be pilot the Navy officer. Okay, because their needs are different. And what is the function? If a pilot gets education from doctor's vocabulary, what will be doing that? So that is the functional English. So English should be presented in meaning. So without meaning, English language teaching will not be appropriate. And that is the functional view of a language. And the last, that is the semantics. We have got this idea. And third view of language theory, that is the interactional view. it sees language as a vehicle for the realization of interpersonal relation and for the performance of the social transaction between individuals. So language is seen as a tool for creation and maintenance of the social relation. What are the things included in this view? That is conversation analysis. Okay. So conversation will be there between two speakers. So you have to analyze in which way. Okay. Actually, for the birthday, we have a different wish. Okay. For some marriage day, we have a different thing. Okay. And if the dialogue is between two persons, they are inviting to have a tour, that dialogue will have different connotation. Okay. So actually language interactional view depends on the social setting, in which setting you are talking. So these views of language is called interactional views, and for this reason interaction, conversation and other things, the social things, can be analyzed in this view. That is the interactional view of a language. So we can say that approach and methods of English language teaching that started a journey with the idea, that is the demand of the common language learners. So from the initial stage, we have started with the idea that English language teaching once upon a time had been following GTM, but in 1920 decades the requirements of the learner changed, and for this reason linguists like Henry Sweet, Otto Jespersen and Palmer, they came up with their idea. Now what's the idea? That means we should have practical approaches and methods in which way we can understand the language clearly and we can fulfill our demands, that means the necessity of the language and the common requirements of the language learning will be appropriate. And for this reason, next time Anthony proposed that three techniques, that is approach, methods and approach is the theoretical perspectives, method is the ways, and technique is the classroom activities. Okay, and among getting a linkage between several methods and approach, we have got some idea, that is language, every language is taught in a different perspectives following some theories. What are the theories? That is the structural view, functional view and interactional view. The structural view is that every language is structured systematically with some elements. What are the elements? Grammar, phonemes and other things. And functional English depends in, that means you have to express your meaning clear. Okay, without meaning, language will not be the language. That will be a type of shouting. Okay, if you can understand anybody's language, why he is shouting, that means you can understand the language. If anybody speaks about there and he starts speaking Chinese language, you will say, oh, he is shouting. Actually, he is speaking his language, but we can't understand the meaning of the language. For this reason, without meaning, language will be a sort of shouting. And the third one, that is the interactional view. That means same language will not be used in several social perspectives like marriage ceremony and other birthday ceremony. So this social interaction and conversation will be analyzed, and what will be appropriate for which social context, that is called the interactional view of a language. Thank you.